and welcome back into a mega episode of The Reckoning, as Don just called it. And similar to our show down in Punta Gorda, our two shows down in Punta Gorda, we've got a laundry list of great guests in the sports tourism industry joining us. And we're going to start it off with two distinguished gentlemen in the sports tourism industry, Mr. John Shaner and Carey Harveycutter out in Salem, Virginia. Don, these two gentlemen you've talked a lot about to me. You speak very, very highly of them, and very, very excited to welcome you guys both on the show. John, Carey, I'll let you guys both introduce yourselves. We can start with you, Carey. Tell us a little bit about your background, where you're from, and what you are currently doing out there in Salem.
I'm Carey Harveycutter, and Zach and Don, thank you all for taking time with us this morning. I'm the Director of Tourism for Salem, Virginia. Salem is in the western part of Virginia, near Roanoke and 40 minutes from Virginia Tech. I'm the Tourism Director for over 30 years. I was Director of Civic Facilities and had responsibility for the Salem Civic Center, Salem Baseball Stadium, and Salem Football Stadium, along with the fair and tourism. Now it's tourism and the fair and championship sporting events. I started down the NCAA D3 path in 1993 with our first Division III football championship, the Stag Bowl.
Very nice. John?
John Shaner, Director of Parks and Recreation for the City of Salem. Come May 1st, it'll be 30 years for me here in Salem. About 20 years as the Director of Parks and Recreation. Been in sports tourism from when I started working on my master's at Marshall University when we were hosting the 1AA National Championship, and then transferred over when I came to Salem and was working for Carey to start out with, and then transferred over to Parks and Rec, and been in sports tourism ever since.
Very nice. And, we've had a few guests on the show that have talked a lot about their relationship between their DMO and their Parks and Rec. And that's one of the first things Don ever told me about you two, was that you guys had such a dynamic relationship and such a dynamic symbiotic relationship between the Parks and Rec side and the DMO side. Tell me a little bit about how that working relationship started and what makes it so strong.
I think it goes back to my early years, where it was really Carey, John Saunders, and myself as kind of a threesome. And we kind of did everything together, whether it be hosting an NCAA event to a girls fast pitch event to the U.S. Olympic team, to I'm looking at a bid and I've gone through it all, highlighted it, wrote my concerns, sent it to Carey and said, hey, put your eyes on this. That we've kind of been together for 30 years. And really, when you looked at it back during when Carey had his department at Salem Civic Center, he had his whole staff, and then I had my whole staff. So we were a big staff of about 40 some people, and we could really put on some great stuff together. And we didn't really look at it as it was Carey's event or it was John's event. We just put it on and what was best for Salem. And that was kind of ingrained in us years and years ago by our previous mayor and city managers on how we operate in the city of Salem. And that's the way I look at everything. Today's world, in whether it be in CBBs or sports commissions, I don't know if you will ever have a partnership like what we have now ever again, to be truthful with you.
And it's personal relationships. Just like when we're booking events, you develop relationships with the NGBs and the groups that you host. John's like a younger brother to me. If he says something, I can take it to the bank. And I think the same thing for me. People say, my gosh, you're like an old married couple. You finish each other's sentences at conferences. It's just, we look at things sometimes totally different, but at the end, we come to the same decision. And it's just amazing. And the John that John spoke about, John Saunders, who was my assistant at the Civic Center, then became the director. He retired. He's now an elected city council member, which doesn't hurt John or Carey at all to have a person that you work so closely with as one of your 5 city council members.
It's funny you talk about the old married couple. I wrote down marriage on my notes as you were speaking because it really sounds like a bit of a marriage. I almost had it in my head like I now pronounce you Chuck and Larry type vibes. You guys are getting along so well, and that's this harkens back to a conversation that we had a few months ago with Abby Owens at Explore Utah Valley. They work hand in hand with their Parks and Rec, and they echoed a lot of the same sentiments. It's about putting your best feet forward, hand in hand, both departments, for what's overall the best thing for the client, for the city, right? For the overall mission. So, really interesting to hear, so many of these really successful DMOs echoing these types of things.
Well, and I watch these guys. I've watched them for a lot of years. I've got history from up there in Virginia, coaching at Radford, so I know what a beautiful place they're at. I also know how aggressive that they've been and that they're able to be because of their elected officials.
Yeah.
Because it's like almost a mandate. Was your mandate right out of the gate say, you guys, we want you to own Division III championships with the NCAA? Because it almost feels that way. They do so much with the NCAA. But what I love the most is over the years, it just seems like you've got more CBBs, more DMOs, sports commissions that are doing a better job in collaboration with each other because it seemed like it was always so adversarial. I brought some of my guys up here. We flew up. We were able to be with John and Carey for a day and a half. They kind of showed the nuts and bolts, how it worked. But they work together seamlessly, and they're recognized nationally. My question real quick, they're probably going, is there a question coming anytime soon? Has ETA or any of the other conferences actually had you guys put on sessions? Because if they have, I should have attended. If they haven't, I will be there. They should.
Yeah, we have both jointly and individually presented at some of the trade shows. Yes.
That's great. Hey, when you were talking about your time in different roles, I wrote down the movie, Remember the Titans. Was that filmed there in Salem or in Roanoke?
That was the movie was our high school here in Salem. It was not called Marshall like they had it on the movie. It was Andrew Lewis. John played football for Andrew Lewis. I attended Andrew Lewis. And the movie was not necessarily like it really was. The game was played in nearby Roanoke, our sister city, and they thumped us. I mean, it wasn't this last second thing. But understand, Herman Boone, they had the 50th anniversary of that game a couple of years ago, and Coach Boone and some of his players came to Salem because Salem was recognizing those players, and there's still that relationship. Coach Boone, of course, has gone on to greater glory with God, but and so is the coach that coached for Salem, Andrew Lewis, at that time.
Wow.
You mentioned Roanoke being your sister city. Is there some collaboration there with their city? Do you guys kind of, for the greater good of the area?
All CVB is Visit Virginia's Blue Ridge. Salem, we have our own DMO, but they're the regional DMO. And John Oney and Antonio Gonzalez, they're responsible for the city of Salem, city of Roanoke, Botetourt, and Franklin County. So they have 5 political subdivisions, and they work with us at trade shows. And when we're hosting the NCA events, they'll take the committees out to dinner and be here to assist us with games.
Very cool. And then taking it a step further, overall, in the entire state of Virginia, what is that relationship like with, I believe it's Sports Virginia, the overarching, sort of entity for sports tourism in the state?
John, you want to take that one?
Carey and I are probably one of the 1 or 2 or 3 people left that's the original for when we started Sports Virginia in the state of Virginia. And when we started it to make Virginia better, and that it wasn't there to steal business from each other or whatever. It was to help each other at trade shows to get events that really we don't host here in the city of Salem, but Virginia Beach or Richmond or Northern Virginia host to collaborate together as a whole state, and to put on client dinners and stuff like that. So yes, we have a phenomenal working relationship with, everybody in the state. I will tell you, it's getting a whole lot more competitive in the state of Virginia, and that you look at all the big, facilities being built. Williamsburg's in the cusp of their big one finishing up, and like Carey said, you got Pulaski coming on board. We don't know what's going to happen with Danville, but everybody has realized what we realized 25, 30 years ago, that this is where you need to be, and if you're not, you're way behind the times. It's kind of like the world of pickleball, and if you're not in the world of pickleball right now, climbing that plateau, going up the mountain, you've already lost the train, because eventually it is going to plateau out, and you don't want to be on it when it plateaus out. So it's kind of the same principle, but yes, there's a whole lot more players coming into the path in the state of Virginia, which it doesn't worry us as much, but it is, everybody wants our business is the biggest thing.
As we go forward, you mentioned a couple of things that really excite me. One is pickleball.
Speaking Don's language when you bring up pickleball.
I mean, my brother turned me on to it probably 15 years ago, and I was really bad. When I moved to Florida, I played 7 days a week, and now I'm back here in Alabama. We're just now starting to build pickleball, and hopefully it'll come on soon. But tried to tell folks 8 years ago, this thing, I provided data. I provided them information on Fortune 500 companies that were getting them on board. You get it. And, to me, sports facilities and pickleball, similar. At some point, you're going to hit that ceiling. My thoughts are the ones that are going to be successful will be the destinations, the beaches, the mountains, the Disneys of the world. And then the next group will be folks like you, those that have credibility in our industry with the rights holders, folks who have a collaborative relationship and that they want to work with. What I see with you guys, what you've done, people want to work with you. They know that you guys have integrity. I look at where we're heading in the future. When we get to that oversaturation point, the ones who will be successful will be the really good ones that can sell, identify, but then have integrity. And you guys have that. So I say, of course, congratulations to you. And you're right. You were ahead of the curve. And back to the sports ETA and our other conferences, my recommendation is for you guys to do more and more sessions, because what you gave to us when we came up from Tuscaloosa with Gary Miner, and we brought his number 2. I mean, we learned a lot from you guys. And I think there's others out there in the country that could do the same.
We're very atypical. You don't see areas like a Salem that are just out there because of the close relationship. Part of it is we're a community of 25,000 people with 600 employees. 5, 6 schools is all we've got in Salem. So everybody knows everybody, and everybody wants the community to do well. John will book a lot of hotel rooms, but he doesn't get a bonus based on hotel rooms booked. He wants the rooms to be good for the clients that come into town and to enjoy themselves and have a good experience.
Are you ever tasked with doing quality of life events?
Yeah, we do a lot of special events also. We do what's called our Friday after fives at our farmers market, which is a beach series all throughout the summer. We do a country, this year we'll have 2 country music. We'll have a spring one and a fall one, a makeup from last year. We do Pumpkin Fest. We do Eel Christmas.
Jazz in July.
Jazz in July. We do a bluegrass festival. So, and a lot of these events are free, or there's only a $5 admissions to get in. So it's very cost efficient. The biggest thing, like you hit on we Parks and Rec, our number one goal is to provide a great community activities, be a quality of life for our community and enhance that.
Okay.
Yeah, that's again another thing we've talked about with a lot of our guests is kind of finding that balance of, what's good for tourism is good for the community. And it sounds like you guys are really striking that and really focusing on that as well as a big part of your guys' overall mission out there at Salem. So tell me a little bit, you mentioned earlier, the NCAA Division III championships. What all do you guys host and how did those come about? What's your history there?
Well, we started in 1993, and that's a long time ago.
It's the year before I was born. Yeah.
We have our next championship come up. It will be the 105th National Championship, Divisions 2 or 3 in Salem, Virginia. And guys, we weren't sports tourism back in 1993. We just wanted a daggone good college football game in our stadium. We're a football crazed community. High school football was huge. And that's all we wanted. And then next year we had softball that came in. And then 2 years after that, we started men's basketball. Then we realized we were doing sports tourism. We really didn't know. We were well ahead of the curve. We made events for the student athletes that basically back then nobody really wanted. The basketball came to us from Buffalo State, and the AD at that time, we went up to visit, said, look, if you wanted a year earlier, take it because it's just more than we can do. And we made a market for these events. This year, in between December of 24 and December of 25, we're hosting 7 national championships. We just concluded in December with women's volleyball. Coming up in March is women's basketball. In April is men's volleyball. In May is Divisions 2 and 3 women's lacrosse. And then we close out 25 in December with men's and women's D3 soccer. And it's a lot. To host 3 championships, basically 4 in a 3-month period is unheard of. And you have conference calls with all 4 of them. You have budgets and financials. You have planning sessions. You have marketing. You have the hotels are booked by the NCAA on location, but you're still making sure those hotels follow through with what they told the on location they were going to do, making sure that there are balloon towers to recognize teams when they come in, welcomes and banquets and all of those things. So it's a lot of balls in the air. And I've got a fair coming up in June, July. So, a lot of things going on.
Stay busy, to say the least.
And John is right there. I may be the tournament director or maybe have co-tournament directors, but John is right there for every step of every NCAA championship event. And it doesn't happen without John and his department because tourism in Salem now is a department of one. It is me.
That's what I wanted to ask you because, the amazing amount of events that you guys bring in is yearly. And so you can't pull that off unless you have a good, strong team behind you. And it starts with 2 of you, but you still need bodies. Talk a little bit about your staffs and then how do you pull it off with volunteers? Is part of what you're doing with community service, quality of life events, also to get the buy-in from those volunteers? It's a good thing for our community.
We don't use a lot of volunteers on the NCAA side. We have host families for every team that comes to town. They have a host family. We have the staff at Roanoke College because other than softball and football, all of our events are held at either Krager Center or Kerr Field at the college. And it's Parks and Rec staff. It's John's staff.
That's amazing. I would have thought that you would have had to get hundreds of volunteers to pull it off. So it's John and his team, for the most part, that are operating these events.
It is. It's Roanoke College.
That is so unique. Well,
it's Virginia's Blue Ridge, and there are three people that are in sports marketing. You know, to be honest with you, Don, when you've rolled around to number 105, you've realized you want people there that you can depend on.
Yeah.
Not that volunteers don't show up, but I know that if somebody's supposed to be there to do the confetti cannons and their mother gets sick, they need to go take care of their mother. If that happens in Parks and Rec, John has another body that will take that person's place. You don't necessarily see that with volunteers.
Can we talk a little bit more about that, John? I want to hear your side. That's fascinating for me because when we hosted the first high school football championships here in Tuscaloosa, they were doing construction at the stadium. So we had a lot of areas that were closed off. I ended up having to recruit about 450 volunteers for the 3-day event. And you're right, Carey, it's kind of like herding cats. So John, talk a little bit about what you do for all these events with your staff.
So, I mean, Carey's correct. I'm very much against volunteers. I'll tell you that in that I got to have somebody I can put a thumb down on top of. And that comes with a paid person. And way we work most of our events is we could have an NCAA event going on, and I'll use this past December in that I can have an NCAA event going on, I can have the Christmas parade going on, and I can have all of our youth sports stuff going on or Moyer going on at the same time. So we kind of divide the department up in sections. And whenever it's an event at Roanoke College, my youth sports division, which is at the athletic fields, that whole division is charged of Roanoke College. Very little out of Moyer or Kiwanis, and that they have to kind of more or less absorb everything else going on. Come spring, when we're hosting, we open up Moyer next weekend. And then the next weekend, I got Virginia Tech coming in for a big spring showcase tournament. And Virginia Tech right now is 5-0. Just threw a no-hitter this past weekend. So
Perfect game.
perfect game. So, I mean, they're on fire and it's going to be a huge event. But come spring, we'll have all this going on with women's basketball and then men's basketball and then lacrosse. But then Moyer is absolutely wide open, hosting weekend tournaments all during the week with, high school, Roanoke College softball, you name it. And also so I can't strap our department for one event. So we have to make sure we're well-rounded and we take care of everything. But I will tell everybody here, I mean, if you don't have a budget of overtime, you can't be in this business because it straps everyone and everybody. But the biggest thing is everybody in our department understands there's times we go 7 days a week for a month. And that's part of being in the business. And the biggest thing I see is that why so many parks and recreation departments don't partner a lot with CBBs or sports commissions is that's a lot of extra work for them. And it's a lot of cost. And you got to be willing to work 16-hour days, 18-hour days. When you start practice at 7 o'clock in the morning and that last game ends that night at 11 o'clock at night, and then you still got cleanup afterwards, it's a long day. And then you got to get right back up the next day. So, and it's just not our NCAA events. We're hosting close to 46 weekend tournaments at Moyer all summer, with that starting up next weekend. So that's on top of everything that Carey, that we do with NCAA. And then all the VHSL, here next weekend, the 21st, 22nd, we got the high school state championship wrestling. Then the next weekend, we're hosting the ODAC Division III men's and women's conference championship for basketball, along with Virginia Tech, and here that same weekend. So, I mean, we're on the cusp of getting wide open.
And to tell you how interesting it was, we were hosting Division III volleyball in December. Well, you played Wednesday, Thursday, off Friday, championship Saturday. We had an off day Friday, but on Saturday, Parks and Rec was also hosting ye old, crafty Christmas on our city market for crafters to come in, the Gingerbread Festival, along with our Chamber of Commerce, which John and I both are on the board of, and then the championship that night. So we actually marketed to the people coming in for volleyball to go to the Christmas parade on Friday night, to maybe, because we didn't play till 4 o'clock. Go to ye old crafty Christmas downtown. Go to the Gingerbread Festival, and then go to Roanoke College to see the volleyball championship. Again, a lot of balls in the air, but there's with a lot of moving parts. But it works. It works because we didn't know better. When we started down this path, we didn't know better. Now, if you wanted to get into sports marketing, you have the track record. You can look at the number of nights and weekends and holidays you give up. We didn't look at that when we started down this path. For years, we hosted baseball, D3 baseball, for 5 years. Now we end up with lacrosse that weekend. That's my anniversary weekend. And I've spent more of my anniversaries with John Shaner than I have with my wife, Judy.
Back to the marriage.
So Don, another aspect you were talking about staffing, and what Carey was saying is, we started the championship game with about 5 bodies and Carey and I, and then by the time we got to close to the 3rd game, I had everybody finished up packing up from the Christmas, everything going on. So we went to almost 20 some people there ready to get the confetti cannons going and getting ready to go. And I knew it was going to happen. I knew they were going to be there, and it was seamless. But that's how we have to roll. And everybody knows. And the biggest thing is why we keep it separated like we do is, like, when we get ready to go to NCAA lacrosse, they know what their jobs are. Okay. I don't have to tell them. Okay. And they know they got to get the field, completely go off to Roanoke College, wipe out the field, put the new field in, put the logos in, put the banners up, and Carey and I will show up there, and it's done. Okay. I don't have to, ask any questions. And that's why we do it that way.
Maybe the first year we hosted lacrosse, we were there to get the banners in the right location. But the one thing I'll say about John is he documents everything. He takes a photo of every banner at every championship. And let me tell you, that is so important when we haven't had women's basketball. We're supposed to have had it during COVID, and it was washed out. We had it in 2019, so it's been 6 years. But we still have the data that we go back to from 19. And even better than that, we just hosted women's volleyball in the same facility, and we can use a lot of the same signage that the NCAA sent in for volleyball for basketball.
I've been writing down as you guys were talking. Sorry, my throat's a little bad today, but a couple things that really came out to me. Number one is your city has a buy-in. Looks like they've had a buy-in from the beginning. John had mentioned the staffing. Zach and I looked at each other on the overtime. I mean, it's important that you build a budget in the way that you can host these, because it's one thing to buy the events. It's another thing to put them on. Mm-hmm. And if you're not using volunteers, and I hear you, John, I like that component. Your staff is your staff, and they're responsible. You can keep the thumb on them. But it looks like it's a well-oiled machine. But things like, do you do staggered days off? Do you give them, do they earn comp time? A lot of overtime, I would imagine. Some departments, different cities, they don't have that mechanism. Their mission is mainly taking care of your locals. Take care of your locals with the ball fields and the indoor. Whereas you guys are purposeful in what you decided to do with all the things that you've done going forward. And then the other one is cross marketing. I love what you guys do, where you're kind of bundling some of the stuff that's going on. Talk a little bit about that, the mission. Talk about your city's buy-in. I don't mean to be redundant, but just talk about things like, how do you stagger people's days off, or is it okay with the overtime? Talk a little bit about that. because it is unique. I mean, I know here in Tuscaloosa,
NCAA championship, or we got Chance Crawford tournament coming up in April, or it's the ODAC conference softball championship going into the Mountain East. Years ago, I used to stagger, or they had to take a day off during the week to compensate for overtime. We don't, I'm back with a very good budget and have overtime, but I don't like to penalize my employees for busting their butt. Okay. I don't want to tell them they got to take a day off. Now they're going to lose 8 hours of overtime for killing themselves for 16 hours from me. Okay. So we get what we get. And, and they have three options. Okay. Number one, by state law, I have to pay them overtime. Okay. So that's number one. I'll automatically encode that. But they also can fill out a form where they have other options. They can either take it as all overtime, or they can take it as partial comp time / overtime, or they can take it in all comp time. They have those options, and they'll take that. And I see everything. I mean, there could be a whole event that 80% of them take it in comp time because they want to build their comp time back up to take more time off during hunting season, or to be able to take an extra vacation or something like that. So, I try not to penalize people for killing themselves or working so hard for us and making us look good and making them take time off during the week, which we could, without a doubt. I could implement that, but no, we do not do that. And like Carey was saying, tying stuff together, we'll have the Chance Crawford tournament going on, but that Friday night, or we'll have another event, we'll have something going on at the farmer's market, and a big, the Salem After Fives with the beach band. And so we'll promote that with the families and stuff like that. They can come up to do that, or we might have something going on with the Red Sox. We partner with Alan with the Red Sox with minor league baseball almost for every event, in that he'll have a game going on Saturday night. He'll have a special promo flyer he's put together where they can buy reduced tickets. So if they finish their games at 4 o'clock, they don't play again till the next day. That's another event that they can go to try to help promote and get people going to the baseball game, to try to, keep moving that dollar. That's the biggest thing. It's not all about that, but it's how many times can we turn that dollar over in the city of Salem, which is a new dollar, not dollars that are already here, but a new dollar they'll keep turning over.
And what I like to say is, we bring a sporting event to town, especially if it's a youth event, a girls softball championship. They come into town, they stay in our hotels, they eat in our restaurants, they buy fuel, and they go home, and we don't have to educate their children. The biggest cost in local government is public education. And if we can get them to come in, we pick up sales tax, we pick up meals tax, we pick up transient occupancy tax. They go to the mall, they visit our facilities. They go to Center in the Square for the museums. They go to the Salem History Museum and see there's a special focus in our History Museum on championships. Where in the community do you have a thing that focuses on championships? It focuses on championships for our high school, Andrew Lewis, and now Salem High School, but there's also a football from the first Stag Bowl that we hosted. So there's buy-in from the museum. There's buy-in from the Chamber of Commerce. There's buy-in from Visit Virginia's Blue Ridge, and there's buy-in from the hotels that we utilize because of the relationships that we've developed over the years.
Wow. Well, Don's right. You guys certainly have it figured out. You guys get it out there in Salem, and it's been great hearing from you guys. Jacob's giving me the rap. And I know we got to close things out here on this segment, but really appreciate your guys' time coming on. Great to meet you guys virtually. Carey, John, again, like I said, Don's talked very highly of you ever since I've known Don. I've known him for quite some time now. So really great to get to know you guys, and really great hearing your stories and how you guys do things in Salem.
Thank you. We go back with Don when he was on the pitch at Radford University.
Right. You guys go back further for sure, but
He's an extremely successful soccer coach at Radford.
Yep.
We were good because I surround myself with good people and players. So, guys, let me tell you something. This was amazing. Thank you. You always know what you're going to get with the two of you, and can't wait to buy you a beer when we get to Tulsa.
Sugo is Tuscaloosa's newest Italian restaurant, offering a wide range of delicious, authentic Italian cuisine. They have a great lunch menu. They're open 11 to 2, 11 to 3 on Sundays. They have specialty sandwiches and pastas that you won't find in the evening time. They have delicious specialty cocktails, and no trip is complete without dessert, right? An outstanding homemade tiramisu that they offer, as well as a variety of other Italian desserts. That's Sugo Italian Restaurant. Visit them online, view their menu, make a reservation at sugoitalianrestaurant.com. They're located on University Boulevard in downtown Tuscaloosa. And the mega show rolls on. Don, we've got two more guests joining us. A couple, dare I say, innovators in the sports tourism realm. We've got Cole McKeel with the Huddle Up Group and Alan Verlander from Airstream Ventures. Gentlemen, thank you for your time, for joining us here today on The Reckoning. And as I ask all of our guests when they first come on, I'd like you guys to go through, introduce yourselves. Cole, we can start with you, and then Alan afterwards.
Yeah, I appreciate the time, guys. And my goodness, talk about a little frightening to be on with such a heavy hitter with Alan. And then obviously, one of the best in the industry with you, Don. It's great to see you again, too. Cole McKeel, I'm the Vice President of Partnerships with the Huddle Up Group. We are a sport tourism consultancy firm. I've been with the Huddle Up Group since 2021, January 2021. Prior to that, I was with the United States Olympic and Paralympic Committee for about 9 years. And then spent some time in college athletics as well. Was a basketball coach at the IMG Academy. Was a manager, student manager, and head manager for University of Louisville men's basketball team with Coach Pitino. So yeah, needless to say, I think I've been in sport my entire life. And when the ball stopped bouncing for me, I tried to figure out how I could stay involved, and been fortunate enough to be able to make a life out of my passion of sport.
So who's the bigger heavy hitter, Don or Rick Pitino?
Well, in this conversation, Don for sure.
That's some good company you're keeping, Don.
I can't wait for him to tell a story. I want to know real quick before Alan, did he ever chew you out?
Absolutely. I think there was a stretch of 3 or 4 games in a row my senior year. During timeouts, when the juices were flowing, Don, you know how that is on the sidelines. You didn't want to be, the center of his attention. If he was calling you, if he knew you for something, you were probably going to be in trouble. And so there were about 3 or 4 games in a row. But one quick one, we're getting out of a timeout. I'm grabbing a water cup, and one of the players was mad and came and smacked the water cup right out of my hand. And of course, where did that water go? On Coach Pitino's chair. So I'm standing there, both hands full. I've got, other things, towels. I'm draped in everything from the timeout. And Coach looks right at me. I'm standing right in front of his chair. It's covered in water. And he looks at me, and I'm frozen deer in the headlights. And so finally he says, "I guess I'll do it." And he grabs a towel from my hands and wipes it off, and then throws it back at me. It was very uncomfortable.
That's awesome.
Hey, Cole, when was your senior? Were you a manager when they were in Jacksonville
I
for
was.
the NCAA tournament? Okay.
For that, I try to forget about that game, Alan. I think it was over right after the national anthem. Cal beat our brains in that day.
Yeah, that wasn't a good game. I do remember sitting right next to Pitino, and there were a few expletives being said on the bench.
Well, that was my junior year, and I have to say I was fortunate. In my 6 years there, we went to 4 Elite Eights, 2 Final Fours, and won a national championship. So
Must have been that manager.
I'll take a butt kicking by Cal for that success.
Had to have been the manager. It's great to hear some of those stories, because we've heard a few Coach Staley stories from folks that have, known Don back in his coaching days. So it's good to hear that there, it's a common theme amongst good coaches to chew some ass here and there. But anyway, let's get into Alan. I'll let Alan introduce himself a little bit.
And I'm sure that he's got some stories on coaches too. Wait till you hear where he's been.
Sure.
I've got a few. Yeah, so I'm Alan Verlander with Airstream Ventures. We started Airstream almost 7 years ago, and survived a pandemic, and kind of out of it came these newly birthed ideas. But I've been in sports like Cole just my entire career, just a little longer than Cole, unfortunately. But mostly in college athletics. Was an associate athletic director at Samford University in Birmingham, Alabama, where I played baseball there had earlier, and then was the athletic director at Jacksonville University here in Florida for almost 8 years, and hired a bunch of coaches and fired a few. So definitely some interesting stories along the way. But then ran sports in the city of Jacksonville for a while and realized, I think we can do this a little differently than through government. And so started Airstream in 18, and it's been an amazing journey. We've continued to be blessed with business. We screw up, make mistakes, but then we try to correct them and do a good thing. So it's been fun. I really appreciate y'all just the whole podcast and all that, shedding light on where sports is as an industry, tourism, all those kinds of things. So it's so important for a community to understand that and reap the benefits from it.
Sure. And Alan, I want to start with you as we get into it. I got a two-parter. One, any relationship at all to Justin Verlander, the new San Francisco Giants?
Yes,
number two?
we are, but
Okay.
I don't know the guy. I'll never meet him. We're like six cousins. The only reason I know that,
Gotcha.
my grandmother, when she was still living, tried to run it down. Finally got to somebody when he was with the Tigers. And they lineaged the whole deal, and we're like six cousins. I can't even remember the story, but yeah, related, but not close.
I had to ask. I'm a huge Giants fan, and I'm pretty excited. I know he's up there in years, had a bad year last year, but I'm excited to have Justin Verlander on our squad going into this new season. But my second part, I just really want to know a little bit more about Airstream Ventures. And I'm sure you can go on and on. It's your company. You can go on and on about it. But I'm an avid camper. I love an Airstream camper. I think they're one of the most iconic RVs on the road. So the fact that you incorporate an Airstream into your name, I want to hear about that. And just tell me a little bit more about what your mission is. Don and I were talking about it, and I think we both kind of described it as like a mobile DMO in a way.
Yeah, I think that's a good thing. I actually own an Airstream with four other guys. We bought it about 15 years ago. All of our oldest children were best friends, and so they got us all together, and the five of us became best friends. And we've taken it to music festivals, sporting events, Daytona 500 races, all that kind of stuff. So when I was thinking about starting the company, when I think of Airstream, I think of fun, events, memories, good times. And so that's what I wanted our company to be when we started out. And we started out in 2018 kind of as an events company. We're here to help you do some things. We know the grant world. We're here to help. And then all of a sudden the pandemic hits. Events aren't happening. What do we do? And so luckily we were in the state of Florida where Governor DeSantis was pretty aggressive in getting us through this. So we got back up to speed quickly. But in essence, we've kind of found our niche. Very similar. I come from college athletics. So the IMG college model where IMG goes in and represents these universities and really handles a lot of their stuff. We kind of did a reverse model in the sports tourism world, and we go to DMOs. We go to smaller DMOs. So we're not going to New York or even Birmingham or Chicago or whatever. We go to smaller DMOs and say, listen, you can hire one person in your DMO, but they may or may not know, have a lot of experience in sports. Instead, you can hire our firm. We have 8 people on our team, 7 people on our team, and we're a full service agency. Plus, you get all the experience, all the contacts that we have immediately. And so right now we're in 9 different communities, and we basically are their sports commission. We have a great partnership with Huddle Up Group and John and Cole and just a bunch of other DMOs that really see the need and see the value. And as we talk about it, tourism, yes, it's heads and beds and all this kind of stuff. But for our smaller communities, tourism is essential to their life. And so we try to bring a bigger story to this of, yes, we're bringing in a lacrosse event, or we're bringing in a soccer event or football event. But you know what? That sports tourism event changed the life of that person that's working in the store, that's working in the hotel, that's working as a bellman, whatever the job is, because now they get a little extra cash to help pay their insurance bill or pay their light bill or whatever. So we're affecting personal change, and we try to take a little bit higher mission of that. But in essence, we represent smaller communities around the country. We become their sports commission, and we bring sporting events to hopefully transform their community.
That's awesome. And does the Airstream get pulled to these places?
So it used to. That's Zach. That's a great question. It used to early on. Now we're in the market of finding like a smaller one that has like a flip up window that could kind of be a mobile thing, but they're priced so high, and I'm cheap. I don't want to buy anything like that. So yeah, we'll see. We have little portable ones, or they make coolers of Airstreams or stuff like that. So those are a lot easier to take to different places.
Well, I love the name, and I do love those Airstream campers. They're timeless. One from the 70s looks exactly like the ones that roll off the assembly line today. So
we bought a 1972 and gutted it and rebuilt it back into a man cave. So it's pretty sweet.
That's very cool.
And it doesn't end with just sports. I mean, I know that you're down there in Sebring, you're doing some work in Asheville, you're in Charleston. Speaking of which, you guys are involved with putting on entertainment as well. Tell me about the concert part.
Yeah, we are. So we like to, I'm a big music guy. I'm a musician, have been for a long time. And so we like to do where there's opportunities to do music festivals or create something like that. We'll do that in a community that really embraces music and has a great, vibrant music scene, and where we notice people will travel. So we've done it with some of our partner cities. We've got some announcements coming up in the next couple of weeks around that as well, with one of our new partner communities that's coming online. So we're finding areas of our strengths that can help communities bring in tourism. And so sports is obviously the dominant in that, but you've got music. We're here in Jacksonville, we run a tailgating area that's right across from Everbank Stadium. So there's 25 train cars currently where I'm sitting in. It also acts as our office, but it's a big tailgating area. Kind of if you've been to University of South Carolina and you see all the cockabooses, it's a very similar concept to that. And then we service this facility, we run it on game days, but then we also manage a couple other facilities around. So we kind of have three different divisions: our sports tourism, facilities division, and then we also run a high school program called High School 912, which we do sporting events. We do ACT and SAT boot camps. We do leadership academies, social media seminars, mental health, all those kinds of things. So, we kind of have our company broken down into three kind of silos, if you will, or verticals. And it works well for us, and they kind of collide together where they need to. But the sports tourism piece and developing new events in those communities is definitely our bread and butter.
So you're not just going in there. Let me back up. You're, in essence, buying events, brokering a deal to buy or get an event. So you're at the trade shows. You're doing the speed dating like the rest of us. You'll go to that city, and then your boots on the ground. You're actually there putting the events on for the most part, or collaborating with groups there. So you truly are an organization that is multifaceted. And transitioning, talking about the Huddle Up Group, wanted to talk with Cole a little bit about the collaboration with you guys. But, I did a little bit of work with John and Cole and that great team there, but I was blown away with all that they do as well. So, Cole, can you talk a little bit about your work with Alan and tell us about Huddle Up Group?
Well, Don, let me say one thing, Cole, not to interrupt. Sure. A lot of our cities do come about through Huddle Up Group. I mean, it is really a synergistic partnership. Not that we've become close friends, of course, but it truly is synergistic. We do have a few cities that we've known forever that we're working with, but there is such a cross collaboration. And I think that the fun thing about sports tourism now, it really starts with Huddle Up Group and everything that they go into and the relationships they build, and then can be completed through an Airstream Ventures activation type. And so we've kind of found this little niche that really starts with them. So I got to give them a lot of credit. John and Cole do an amazing job. And, it's been fun to kind of cross collaborate and even carry things out to fruition. So Cole, floor is yours.
Yeah, well, my goodness, I appreciate the plug there, Alan. And it really does start, and it's so inspiring to me listening to Alan speak. I think that every time I hear him tell his story, I learn something new. So he says that you can break his business down into three different sections. I think there's a million other verticals that we probably don't know about that they're doing as well. So but it really does start with kind of the collective tissue Alan was talking about. And I know faith is obviously something that's really important to both of us. But it's really that concept of servant leadership, right? I think that that's really where it comes together, both from the Huddle Up Group standpoint as well as from Airstream Ventures. That's really where that collective tissue started to come together. We started to realize that rising tide raises all boats, right? And the industry, if you really put the industry first, we truly believe that the industry will take care of you. And it's been the case. What we do at the Huddle Up Group is we want to make sure that, we take every single community very, very seriously and very delicately, because as Alan mentioned, tourism shapes and changes lives. These new facilities that come in, they're bringing in all sorts of revenue and tax implications and things that really push these communities forward. And so as the Huddle Up Group, what we're really trying to do is we're trying to get communities to think broader about sport tourism, not your just traditional bat and ball sports, but how do we think much, much broader than that? How do we think about, jet ski racing? How do we think about disc golf? How do we think about, of course, the one that everybody's hearing every single day, pickleball? How do we make sure that these communities are really trying to find their niche within sport tourism? And so what we try to do is we try to use data as much as we can. We're a data-driven company. It's actually kind of interesting how we've become that. It used to just be, John Schmieder at the time and Gary Alexander. John, obviously, if people aren't aware who he is, he's been in this industry a very long time. He started and ran sports commissions in Tulsa, Denver, and Phoenix. He was the head of Sports ETA, which was NASC at the time, twice. So, he's been around this thing a long time, and he'll tell you himself, it used to just be he would come into these destinations, we would go through a consulting project, and he would give his opinion. But there wasn't really any meat on that bone. It was just, this is what I would do if I were in your situation. Well, that's developed into what you can see over my left shoulder, which is called the Sports Tourism Index, which is truly a benchmarking tool, completely data-driven, completely unbiased, that a destination can fill out a survey in different buckets, and it'll tell them what they do well, what they don't do well, and then areas of opportunity that are out there. And that's been a game changer for cities like London, Kentucky, to be able to say, well, who really is our comp set? What should we be focused on? What are our neighbors doing? How do we make sure that we're not trying to be everything to everyone, but how do we really find our niche for London, Kentucky, so that we're really doing what we do extremely well? So from our standpoint, I grew up in an entrepreneurial family. My dad still runs our family business, McKeel Equipment Company. It's the oldest family-owned and operated case construction agricultural dealership in the country. We're very proud of that. It's going to be 90 years coming up. This year actually is 90 years, which is pretty amazing. My grandfather started the business back in the Great Depression. So I was always told, the best boss that you could have is yourself, right? And so I've kind of always tried to affiliate myself with really good people, and John's absolutely the best boss I could ever ask for. But and I know I'm getting off topic, but really what we try to do is we try to solve problems, right? We try to solve problems, and that's going to look maybe very similar in markets, but it'll also look very different. And so whatever that problem is, we want to help destinations figure out how to solve it and move their sport tourism forward.
Sure. Continuing on with what you guys do at Huddle Up Group, when I first started in sports tourism at College Station, Huddle Up Group quickly became, kind of a benchmark. It was like, oh yeah, follow what Huddle Up Group says. And my old boss, Kendra Fry, knew John Schmieder well. Huddle Up Group was, we were a client of Huddle Up Group at one point, I think before a few years before I got there, and we did our morning huddle ups. I still get the Monday morning huddle up. I just got it about an hour ago. So you guys send out, newsletters as well to people who sign up for that. And then another aspect that the Huddle Up Group puts out every year, John puts out, is the industry trends going forward for the year. What are some of the industry trends currently that Huddle Up Group is putting out there for the sports tourism world?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's one of the cooler things I think that we get to work on. It's been a number of years now. So we do a trends article for the sports planning guide for SPG that comes out the end of every year. And so, what we're seeing now is continued to be the case through the pandemic, which is the rise of silent sports. And what we mean by silent sports are those that a lot of people were doing in COVID, like a disc golf, something that you can literally go into the woods by yourself and play. So sports like that. We're seeing a lot of investment into natural assets as well. I think currently we're working on projects with the state of Arkansas and the state of Virginia specifically, where they're really looking to invest into their natural assets of, rock climbing or cycling, mountain biking, taking advantage of trail systems and bodies of water, things of that nature. So that's a huge one. We're calling it the facilities arms race as well. Everybody is investing into new facilities, whether it's building new facilities or reinvesting to put a lot of lipstick on older facilities. So that's a huge piece too. One of the things of note, we're actually seeing, we weren't ever sure that we were going to get to a point where there was going to be an oversaturation of diamonds and flat field complexes based on the number of events. And as you guys know, there's so many event organizers in those spaces when it comes to baseball, softball, and then in flat field sports as well. But we're actually seeing that the number one and number two most needed types of facilities that are out there in the industry today, meaning that there's so many events and there are not enough specific facilities to keep up with the demand of the events. We're seeing indoor hydraulic tracks. And the good thing about indoor hydraulic tracks is that you can click a button essentially and it raises the banks, but then you can also click a button which flattens them down so that you can lay courts on top of it. So it turns into this great niche multi-use facility. And then specific cross-country courses as well. We're seeing that there aren't enough cross-country courses. Another trend that kind of relates to that is people are trying to get their golf courses offline. Golf courses through COVID, the public course is probably charging something similar to what the private courses are charging these days. So people can't, they're not booking up public events or public courses rather because of that. They're running out of money. So we're seeing a lot of people doing other things, whether it may be disc golf, whether it may be a cross-country course like we're talking about. They're using these muni golf courses to transfer into other types of markets. So that's a big one that we're seeing as well.
I want to get to Alan real quick on a specific sport, but I'll wade in with you. First of all, doing a little bit of the work with you guys with the Huddle Up Group, to me, one of the most important elements that you brought was doing a SWOT analysis. And then after you get all that data, to actually go in and meet with the stakeholders there in that community. Those meetings were critical to try to educate because you guys are the pros. And like you said, your backup isn't just, well, John says this. No, John says this, but also your index, the data backs it up. But still, you will have elected officials that doesn't matter what the data says, their heart's speaking what they want. And so there's that double edge. Do you beat them up with more data to shut them down and build something else, or do you just go with the flow? Data is an incredible thing, and my time with you guys, I learned so much. I wish we could have brought you in a long time ago to Tuscaloosa, because the threats are out there. The oversaturation of facilities. Don Schumacher said it years and years ago, and I don't think it was well received back then, but we are getting into that point where the arms race, if you will, on facilities is getting close. So Tell me real quick, and then we're going to switch over to Alan. I want to hear his take on it, and then what sports are out there in his area that he's actually going after hard. Like, is pickleball one of those? I know that we have. Let me just stop there. Go ahead and answer some of those.
Yeah, absolutely, and it really is. We want to make sure that, again, at the end of the day, we're just the consultant. We understand that when we put together a proposal or a project for someone, the worst thing that could happen, but I know that it happens, unfortunately, is it becomes a paperweight, right? I mean, it really just, it sits on a desk until 5 years later, they realize that the plan is outdated now. And so they go back and they do it again. We hate that. That's the worst thing that we feel could happen, is that you spend money to invest into a strategy and some recommendations, and then you don't touch them. But at the end of the day, we are the consultant. We're not going to be there for forever. So it really is on the team that's in place to do what it is that they want to do. And a lot of it's funny, you talked about, the mayor maybe having heart in some area. Probably the number one driver for facility development in the country is, hey, my son plays baseball. We need baseball fields. We don't want to travel. So how do we get something here? And I can tell you that is the very worst way to back into building a facility, because of so many reasons that are very obvious to us. What happens when that kid stops playing baseball? What happens when he gets burned out and you've put millions of dollars into a facility that's not even being used. So for us, it's hard when you don't get the reception from the proposals that you're suggesting. But at the end of the day, it's not our place to implement. It's just our place to provide the strategy of what we think. And it really is on the boots on the ground to be able to implement those things. So there have been situations where we've been hired to do some work, and whomever it is, the community has completely not justified the things that we're proposing. And so they've kind of done their own thing. One thing that we really struggle with sometimes is, when they tell us what we need to be saying versus what we actually believe we should be saying, right? That's very difficult. And I know we've all been there before, but one of the things we want to make sure we're doing is not getting whoever hired us in trouble. And so that's a big piece of it, is how do we say what we need to say, but how do we do so to protect the relationships and the political well-being that's there? How do we make sure we're saying things sensitively and not ruffling feathers as much as we can? Because the last thing we want to do is create an even more tense situation or environment when we leave town, because that's not good for anybody, including us.
Well, Alan, elaborate on some of what we were talking about, and then just tell me and tell our guests, how is it that you identify sports and cities that you're going to go after and bring to them? Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, so piggybacking on what Cole said, I think our thing is we go into communities even before we have a contract. We'll go into them and put a whole sports lineup performer together based upon the facilities that we see. I think Cole brings up a good point, is people want to selfishly be what they want to be without understanding what is out there and the competition that is out there. And so we try to go into our communities and say, listen, these are the 3, these are the 5, these are the 10 sports that you can be known for based upon your current facilities. Let's shelf for 1 second, the dream of a new facility. Here's what we're telling you we can go attract with your current facilities. We may have to be creative. We may have to be very giving in the way of grants, but we're going to be able to get there. Y'all know, we've all been in sports a long time. If you have the facility and you have everything in place, then it becomes a relationship business, right? It is such a relationship business. Don, you and I know that from the college athletics world. Cole, you do too. It's still a relationship and trust business. And so, but with our communities, we try to get them to think outside the box with their current facilities. And then when they start talking about, well, what should we build? We do and work with other consultants about heat maps and what are people around us have? Let's not be known for this particular thing if there's already 57 baseball fields and complexes around within a 2-mile radius. That doesn't make sense. So a lot of it is, if you look at the lineup of events that we work with probably 40 or 50 different event planners, and most CVBs may not work with that many because they're stuck to their set of facilities. I think the cool thing about Airstream is we have to work with a myriad and a big stable of event planners, because we have all different cities that have all different types of facilities and want all different types of events, and their need periods are all different. And so we have to have a big stable of event planners and event friends that can put different things in our different cities. But you mentioned pickleball. Pickleball is really an interesting thing right now. We work with USA Pickleball and we work with US Senior Pickleball. I think what communities are trying to figure out is how to build these facilities, because I love the sport of pickleball, but you can do, if you have 20 courts, you can only fit so many players for that weekend in those courts, versus if you have 8 fields, I can go get a lacrosse event that's going to have 3,000 players and bring in all these teams and all that. So, I think facilities and communities are trying to figure out this whole pickleball phenomenon. You have some that say, hey, we're going all in. We're going to build 40 facilities or 40 courts. We're going to do all this. And they get a lot of big events. But still, if you look at what is that community wanting to do, there's a lot of events that can bring a lot more impact to an event that only brings 200 to 300 players. And so I think it's all analytics and what does that community really want to do. We go into communities and almost everybody's got pickleball courts now, but some have 4, some have 6. We tell them, listen, you're not going to bring a pickleball event here. You may do a local event, but you know what? Let's focus on somewhere else. You may even have 12 courts. We're not going to really bring USA Pickleball. Well, how can we not bring USA Pickleball? They're not educating people. And then the last thing that I always tell our communities, if you're wanting to look into a different sport or types of facilities, I think the thing that most communities miss out on is this. They don't look at the type of events that they want to bring to those facilities. Bring those people in, let them become an ally in the building of your event, because then once they feel like they've helped you with that facility, what are they going to do? They're going to bring your event. They're going to bring their event to your facility because they had buy-in from the very beginning. I look at pickleball, and these cities are going and building all kinds of pickleball courts all over the country. I'll ask them, well, have y'all talked to USA Pickleball and asked what they needed? Well, no. Should we? That'd probably been the first call I make, and so whether it's a baseball field, I would probably go call USSSA or Prospect Wire, some of these. Hey, what do y'all need? How can we make it different? I think these communities are missing the mark because something Cole pointed out, from sometimes the elected officials, I want this and this is what I want. And it's kind of looked at with blinders versus how can we make this different and even more spectacular based upon the needs of the event planners, not the needs of the community. And that is a thing that people miss out on that I've learned over the last couple of years.
I know we're up against, and I want you to ask the last one or close us down, but real quick, Naples, Florida. They were purposeful in what they did on building pickleball, and they made it a week long, almost 11 days, if you will, with the move in and the build out. I mean, that tournament, forgetting the girls' names who put it on, I know they sold, but I mean, they made that a true week long event. So that jacked the numbers up. You're right. Team sports, they've got typically 18 to 25 person squads, so you have bigger numbers. Pickleball, you're right. It's either singles or doubles, so the numbers are smaller. But some communities, like we were just in Montgomery. Mm-hmm. You remember when Ron was talking about horseshoes? Yeah. All right. Horseshoe did the same thing. They ended up there for a whole week, and the economic impact from that was $3 million direct spent. So you've got to make sure that you're listening to the John Schmieders of the world and the Cole McKeels and Alan Verlander. They're going to tell you maybe what you don't want to hear, but you need to be told.
Yeah.
Then it's up to you as a city to decide what it is you're going to build. And then what Cole talked about earlier, it's trends, and you brought it up. What are the trends in sports? What are the fads? What are the ones that are dying ducks? So you've got all that. The key is you have, and I'm old school, you guys know that. I'm a salesman, I'm just a doggone coach, and I could recruit, and I got lucky. But coming on this side, I'm not real big on data driven. But if I were younger and back in the business, that's the way I would go. Whether it's a SWOT analysis, whether it's a John or Cole or an Alan telling me, hey, Don, you get ready to step in it, be careful. This isn't going to go this way, or this way, it's going that way. So, again, I said earlier that this was going to be an all-star show.
Yeah.
Anybody who's watching, you are smarter for listening, maybe not to me, but to these guys.
Definitely not to me.
And so I encourage anybody out there that if you're thinking about either building facilities, reach out to the Huddle Up Group. They won't lead you astray. They will tell you what you need to know. And then, my gosh, what Alan has done in such a short period of time, the wealth of experience and knowledge that he has from college athletics to begin with, and now what you said a minute ago, you're entrenched with 50 or more event rights holders, so you know what they're looking for. And so that's one-stop shopping to me, going to Alan. All right. At least once during a show, I'm going to get on my soapbox, so there you go.
It's all right. We like when Don gets
I just
up on
want
his
to add this
soapbox.
in because I think it's really important what you just said. We had a situation with a southern state. We were in a community. This has been a couple of years, and they really wanted to invest millions into a brand new tennis complex because they wanted to attract the USTA's Southern Sectional. And so we asked them, the first question was, why? Why do you want to do that? Right? What do you mean, why? I don't know. Have you asked yourself why you're trying to do this? You're trying to get all this, political gain and all of these things to get this complex. Have you reached out to the USTA? Have you asked them what they need? And if you built this, would they come? Right? Because that's the old saying, right? If you build it, they'll come. Well, you should probably find out. And so we picked up the phone and we called the USTA, and they said, no, we wouldn't go there. And that was the end of the conversation. And it was just a simple question. But to your point, Don, sometimes you have to ask the questions that you might be scared to ask, but you'll be better off because of it. And I can tell you, especially in a government position like that, you better be asking those questions, because if it goes poorly, your job's going to be on the line for it.
Yeah.
That sounds very similar to some things that I know, but we won't get into that.
That's for another show.
That's for another show further on down the line. But
Hey, listen, guys. You close it out, but real quick, please tell Kevin and Vince and John that I send my regards. And Alan, you and I, next show, I'll see you in Tulsa, but we got to sit down and talk music. I just came from Huntsville. They've got a great facility up there, the Mars Music Hall. I ran up this weekend to go see Warren Haynes. That's my guy. He's got Governor Mule. He was in the Allman Brothers, stuff you know. But he also has his own band, right? Another band. It's the Warren Haynes Band. I thought he had brought all these bouncers in. They were 6'5", 6'7", and I mean big guys too. But it was a great show. But I want to talk music with you one of these days.
Let's do it. We can do it in Tulsa. I'm sure we can find a music hall there.
There you go.
Kane's Ballroom in Tulsa. That's a pretty famous one in the Red Dirt country scene. So, Cole, Alan, thank you guys so much for joining us. It was great chatting with you guys, getting to know you guys. Really, really fascinating stuff from both Huddle Up Group and Airstream Ventures. Alan, one piece of homework for you: if you could send us some pictures of that Airstream, Jacob will put them in the show, and when you're talking about the man cave and what it looks like, he'll spotlight that a little bit. But I think most of our listeners will probably like to see the inside of that retrofitted trailer.
That's a deal. As soon as we get off this, I'll get some and email them to you so you can have them.
Sounds good. Thank you, guys.
Thanks. Appreciate it.
Thank y'all. Appreciate it.
Make sure your HVAC unit is running up to speed and keeping your family comfortable all year long with Bibb Heating and Air. Bibb Heating and Air is a fully licensed and insured HVAC company here providing all of West Alabama with first-class customer service every single time. The owner and operator is Devin Morgan. He's a good buddy of mine. Personal endorsement. He installed my new heat pump about a year ago. Could not be more pleased with the process. It was quick. It was efficient. It was affordable. So call Bibb Heating and Air today at the number on your screen if your system needs a checkup, or if you're considering a new unit. Mention the Reckoning Sports Tourism Podcast, and my pal Devin will knock off your dispatch fee. That's $50 in savings for mentioning the Reckoning. Again, that's Bibb Heating and Air. Call their number on the screen. And we're back here in our mega episode of the Reckoning Sports Tourism Podcast. And you want to talk about boosting our credibility. I mean, we already had, obviously John and Carey, and then we had Cole and Alan brought the Huddle Up Group, Airstream Ventures on. Now we've got guys from Sports Facilities Company who are probably the heaviest hitters in the sports tourism industry as far as the facilities go. And we're joined by JD Wood and Jamie Cox. Guys, thank you guys so much for coming on the show. Like I tell our guests every time, I want to hear a little bit about you guys, and we'll start with JD. Tell us who you are, what you do, and then we'll go to Jamie.
Yes, sir. So JD Wood. So I'm the Regional Vice President of Strategic Development for Sports Facilities Companies. So I've had the pleasure of working in our tourism industry, sports tourism, for going on 18 years now, if you include attending teams as a sophomore in college. So excited to chat with you guys today and just have some great discussion. I'm looking forward to it.
And JD, before we get to Jamie, I will say JD was a mythical figure when I worked in College Station. Everybody in my office loved JD, knew JD. Kendra Fry, who was a guest on our show, thought the world of JD. John Friebel, who's now at Destination Bryan, where Jamie is at the Legends Event Center. He talked very highly of these guys, and especially of JD. So looking forward to chatting with you some more too.
I appreciate it. So very blessed and humbled to have some great relationships in the industry, and as you two guys are as well. So excited for today and help out wherever I can.
Cool. Jamie?
I got to start with, that is not what I hear around town about JD Wood. So I don't know.
Here we go.
Yeah, that is not the mythical legend that you speak of. Just kidding. We all love brother JD. He did a great job here, and he's actually one of the reasons I'm sitting in this chair in the beautiful Legends Event Center in Bryan, Texas. But before I got here, I actually started, and I went to a small little liberal arts school, Sanford University in Birmingham. Thought I was going to go be a high school basketball coach, athletic director back home in my state of Georgia. That didn't pan out. Got involved with the YMCA, running sports, fitness, aquatic programming. Really enjoyed the facility management piece of that, and that led to a stint in grad school at Georgia State University in downtown Atlanta. So going from small liberal arts, Don, there in Homewood, Alabama, to downtown Metro Atlanta was definitely a change of scenery, but I really enjoyed it. And it opened a few other doors, but I actually got back into the YMCA, moved over to, I started in the Atlanta Association, moved over to Birmingham and spent a few years there before I joined the SFM team and helped open the Hoover Met Complex almost 8 years ago. So I joined back in the spring of 17, and it's been a great journey. I got to start in Hoover as a sports director and kind of work my way up. It was a blessing and a curse to follow JD Wood down in Panama City Beach. So those are some big shoes to fill, but I got to go down there as GM, and that's led me out here to Bryan, Texas, which in all honesty, a kid from Rome, Georgia, never thought I'd end up in Texas, guys. I mean, but I love it. It is everything JD sold me about. He didn't have to sell me very hard on Panama City Beach, but he had to sell me a little bit about coming out here, and it's been amazing. And I know we'll talk about the relationships with our DMO and some of the events we have, but I'm happy to be here. Glad I'm sharing the screen and the podcast with my close friend JD.
Well, hey, we're glad that you guys are sharing your time with us here on The Reckoning. And just again, both of you guys can take a stab at this. Just tell us a little bit about the Sports Facilities Company and what all it is that you guys do. You mentioned, first off, Hoover Met. I just saw on LinkedIn they were the first venue now. They're Safe Sports and Safe City and Safe Venue certified. I saw that come down the wire on LinkedIn. But you mentioned Hoover Met, Panama City, Bryan, Texas, obviously the Legends Event Center. Those are all SFC complexes. how big, explain to us just how big SFC really is in the sports tourism world.
Well, I know I'm going to speak first, but I want it's basically to key off Jamie.
Of course you are.
Yeah. So
course
I
you
want Jamie to go and this is why I look at it from a perspective as a former GM and then being, helping out with venues on the municipality level before I was at SFC. The GMs and the boots on the ground in our venues are the most important people of what determine if we're successful or not. And so individuals like Jamie, which is not very many like Jamie, for good, for better or for worse, depending on your perspective, that is the group that really defines who we are at SFC. And so I would love to open it before I talk from the perspective of the support center and who we are corporately. I think I'd love to hear, Jamie's perspective, and open it up for him.
Yeah, guys, when I joined Hoover Met Complex, I had joined the SFM team. I had no idea what sports facilities management. At that time, we were sport facility advisory, sport facility management, SFA, SFM. I had no idea. One of my friends just said, "Have you heard about this massive sports complex they're building out in Hoover?" And I threw my name in the hat and luckily got the opportunity. So when I started in Hoover, we managed sport tourism facilities specifically. I think we had three. We had Myrtle Beach, Rocky Top, and JD, correct me if I'm wrong. I think it was Hoover was the third to come on board. We're now not all sport tourism facilities. We'll get into kind of the different facilities that we manage. There are some recreational and an arena that's a little different than just your focus on the sport tourism. But we're now in over 60 venues that we're managing. So 8 years ago, we had three. And so I've seen the growth. It's been incredible. And to JD's point, I think the reason you're seeing the growth is because we're having success, boots on the ground in the community, led by all the team members, not just the general managers and the director of ops and business development people. But we have to build that relationship with the community. We have to build a relationship with our client, whether it's a private or a public entity, and immerse ourselves in that local community and do whatever is right for that facility, for that client, for that community. And I think we've proven that pretty much across the board, we're doing a pretty good job of that. You're going from 3 facilities to 60 plus. I don't want to quote a number because it seems like every day I'm being told there's another one added to the portfolio. So we're a company that, and I'll let JD talk about all the other non-management pieces, but we focus on the management piece because that's our bread and butter. And we have a national reach within the tourism network of individuals that we've pulled from DMOs, we've pulled from the collegiate world, we've pulled from the professional industry. So we're all over the board. We're not just recreational former YMCA or high school coaches that are doing this. We're pulling in some experts in the industry to help lead our team and lead our growth.
Like I said, heavy hitters, huh?
I told you.
To say the least. I also saw recently I think it was on LinkedIn, USA Today recently named SFC one of the top companies to work for as far as overall culture goes. I guess you guys could both speak to that a little bit.
Yeah, I would love to kick off this one. So I always talk about, you joked, we were talking before we got on about being Aggies and being in College Station and, or let me phrase that, me being an Aggie. And right. So, working for helping the university, working with the city, it was a strong tie. I didn't know if I'd ever leave College Station, to be honest. And it's amusing to think about that now. But in the perspective, I was at Sports ETA and Jason Clement, our CEO, spoke. And I just remember like, hey, I'm good in College Station, but that gentleman right there, I'd run through a brick wall for him if I ever had the opportunity. And, God had a plan. 2 months later, I got a phone call about Panama City Beach and went down that rabbit hole and ended up being the first GM there. And so I think it starts with, to quote one of my favorite movies, attitude reflects leadership, right? And from Remember the Titans. And so I think to me that precursor is set by Jason's aspects of how we continue to evolve our relationships with our partners and clients and destinations. So, we approach it how we've got to our 66 plus number is essentially by one community at a time, right? And so that's the approach that we have as when we're dealing, working with our partners and our boots on the ground, our GMs, our marketing staff, everyone, but then also corporately speaking, right? It just is a great place to work where everyone is a cohesive team, but hungry to push the envelope at any chance they get. And to be honest, you don't always have that. And from that perspective, the other thing that I love so much, and I think you guys see this whenever we've spoken at conferences and things like that, the love and support from the perspective of individually, but also where yes, SFC's brand, SFC's messages, but they value our brand and our messaging as individuals as well, and use that to make everyone successful from the company, but also individually as well. So you have that love and support from everyone at the support center to continue to grow the team and continue to push forward. So I think 4 years in a row of winning that award as a top workplace in the industry, and I think that just continues to showcase where we're going. And even though we are growing quickly, as Jamie mentioned, we're not losing our core values of who we are as people and as an organization.
Yeah, and I want to speak to one thing that JD said. He talked about that hunger. We're a bunch of competitive. A lot of us have egos. These two guys, notwithstanding, but it's a healthy competitive balance that we have within the company. When I started, it was the corporate. It was the home office. Now we label it as the support center because it's truly what it is. It supports our efforts. It supports the business development effort that JD and his team are doing to go find more than 66 venues that we're managing. And it truly is it's a team environment. I mean, not to get into sport cliches, but I can't imagine working anywhere else. It's been a blast.
I remembered you guys from way back because when I was Tuscaloosa Tourism and Sports, we always had a booth at the trade shows next to the S's. Tuscaloosa T, Sports Facility Company, Management, SFA. You guys were always right next to us. So I remember back in the day when you were just getting started with Dev and Jason and, a few folks working that booth. And so I could hear a lot of the dialogue about the startup, what you were doing. And sure enough, many years later, to watch and to remember what they were talking about to where you are today. Just the name change itself, a couple changes, right? You are Sports Facility Company. So do me a favor real quick, and I definitely want to talk about Rocky Mount. And I want to talk about that as changing a community that was really, really hurting. And what you guys did, and I went to high school and junior high in Greensboro. I vacationed at the North Carolina coast, so I know Rocky Mount. I know what it looked like, okay? I know what it looks like now, what you brought to the table. But do me a favor, the two of you, tell me about the buckets, if you will. You guys have a team that will do the data part of it on the front end, which is the assessments, then the actual build out, and then the management. I know I'm leaving some pieces out, but talk a little bit about that, the different buckets, if you will.
Yeah, Don, I mean, if you want to set up a sales consultation, we can do that after the fact, and we can go through every step that you would like to. So this is a everyday conversation for me. So is what we like to say is what SFC wants to support you from concept to concrete, right? So taking care of your needs, basically starting off with your SFA, your Sports Facility Advisory. So again, as Jamie mentioned, that's what we've done the longest in perspectives, right? So we do about 150 studies a year from pro formas, feasibility reports, market opportunity reports, optimization studies. So basically, if you're looking at a new venue, how big, how many fields, how many courts, how many sheets of ice, how many lanes to swim in, how many pools, all those variables, how much it costs, how you would operate it, what's the end of goal financials that match your goals, right? So what you're trying to, are you going to Parks and Rec provide the great things in life and lose 80 cents on a dollar, or if you're going to break even, or if you want to make money, right? So we work through that conversation with you and kind of showcase, is it plausible? Or is it and if. So you can do this if you make this change, or if, or is it, hey, it's possible by achieving all your goals, right? So we have the advisory perspective. And then essentially is what we have is from our SFD, which is, we talked about earlier, SFA, SFM, you had the house logo. Well, then we got into actually in Panama City Beach with me. We started our development arm and with Jake Whitaker and Mike Mays and the team, and had the opportunity to get into owner's rep right? And so it's essentially is what was happening before that is that we would have the advisory side, and then we were doing the management. And of course, you guys know with cities, right? Our municipalities are partners. A lot of times when you want to save money for you value engineer it a lot to get it to where you need to at the end of the day, right? So if we were able to come in as an owner's rep and make sure they understood the importance of certain factors in achieving those pro forma goals that were talked about, and then managing it to achieve those goals, we can come in as an owner's rep with venue planning and design, overseeing the processes. I mean, if you think from a perspective, you have the city of Bryan, city of College Station, Tuscaloosa, right? They have parks directors, tourism directors, and public works director that have a job, not just this $50 to $60 million venue that they have to oversee. So we can come in as owner rep, a third-party service organization to support them in that processes. So, as I mentioned, venue planning and design, FF&E procurement, and we have been up to this stage been able to be very successful in saving money on the project holistically. That goes back to the project, right? To put back into it. It doesn't come to SFC, it goes into the project. And then, as you mentioned earlier, full-time management, right? So we were able to go from owner's rep and planning the venue to pre-opening. So basically hiring legalese to to groundbreakings, to grand openings, and then full-time management moving forward for 5, 8, 10 years and beyond is continued to be the goal. Sorry, that was a lot.
No, and that's what I wanted. And let me just say this, I'll add this. There are a lot of cities out there that should have used your expertise, okay? But there's oftentimes elected officials' egos involved. Mm-hmm. There's money and ego involved. We're going to do it ourselves, let's just say. And then they find themselves down the road needing help. I've also noticed that you guys are fixers. You come into places that should have listened to you in the beginning. So many of those facets, like you saw me cringe when I heard the term value engineering. Sometimes it's better for an outside person to come in and tell people what the same guy that's there is telling them. But they're going to listen to the outside consultant. Oftentimes that outside consultant's not even brought in, and then you screw up. And the people that have boots on the ground are trying to get the outside folks. So my point that I'm being a little long-winded on is you guys aren't just the beginning, the middle, and the end, but you also sometimes, when not brought into a project, you actually come in and either help them fix it or take the whole damn thing over.
Yes, sir. So the two things I have, one is one of my favorite things to talk about. So essentially, outside consulted is that Tommy Boy effect. That's the guarantee on the box, right? That's what we look from that perspective, right? So I love that line, the movie, everything. So I like to share that. But then also I would tell you at the end of the day, right, we're having, Jamie and I are in our team at the sports center, and then all up to close to 3,000 employees we have across the country, right? When we're working through our partners is, yes, we want the opportunity to support from the ground floor from the very beginning. But at the end of the day, at the least I want to do is create a raving fan at the end of it. So even if, hey, JD, for these reasons, we have to go to a different direction. But because of that initiation and focus of creating a raving fan, there's a lot of times where let me phrase that. Fewer times that we're not being selected, but in those few times, we're able to a lot of times come back around. It might be a year, 2, 4, 5, but we're having a lot of success in keeping those relationships and being genuine in that approach of that, creating that raving fan perspective.
I know I'd said it earlier, but tell the folks that are listening what you guys did for a community. An example I used earlier is Rocky Mount. Tell them a little bit about what y'all did to help that community with the footprint that you have there.
Jamie, with your relationship with David Joyner, I don't know if you'd want to hit that one on first.
Yeah, my little bit of experience with David on the front end. So my knowledge, I was in Hoover at the time, heard about this really cool event center concept they were going to have in Rocky Mount. And in all honesty, I had no idea what Rocky Mount, North Carolina was. Started doing some research. We hit the ground running, but we didn't hit the ground running in the right direction at first with Rocky Mount. Sometimes it takes a little bit of time to develop that relationship with the client and with the community, almost more importantly. And we didn't have that positive start that we wanted to. So it took a little bit of time, and it took 100% team effort. starting from our support center and John Sparks, who was at the time my general manager in Hoover and was helping oversee the Rocky Mount facility. And ultimately what we did was we found the right person to lead that team and take what the concept of the Rocky Mount Event Center truly was and implement how it's going to positively impact the community. And that's David Joyner, and he's from that area. He kind of took on an interim role, and that was back in 6-7 years ago. He's still our GM today, and he deserves all the credit for helping revitalize a downtown area, a community that really needed something to bring people into their local businesses. And there's new businesses that I'm hearing about that are sprouting up in the downtown area. It's a community that desperately needed a recreational and event space, but also something to attract tourists into their town and into their neighborhoods. And David and John Sparks, and I'm sure I'm leaving out a lot of, obviously Jason Clement, but 100% team effort there. It was fun to see from the kind of rough patches to where it's one of our most successful venues.
It's kind of along those same lines, Jamie. Let's talk a little bit and brag a little bit about your place, the Legends Event Center there in Bryan, Texas. That was a municipal golf course when I first moved to College Station that had been shut down, and there had been plans for a new event center there. And you guys kind of had the, I guess I would call it a privilege, to sort of build up the event center at the same time that Destination Bryan was building up a DMO, because it was right when, we called it the divorce. We had Kendra Fry on, and we talked about, some of the dynamics that led to Experience Bryan College Station splitting off into two DMOs. Well, John Friebel hit the ground running at Destination Bryan. At the same time, the Legends Event Center is being built and opening up. Talk a little bit about what your guys' facility has to offer, and sort of how that relationship is with Destination Bryan, with John and Morgan and Chris.
Yeah, I love talking about that relationship because they've been essential to our success. And I love all the DMOs I've worked with in other locations and got to know across the travels through the trade shows and conferences. But they're none better than John Friebel and his team at Destination Bryan. And I'll circle back around to kind of highlight some of what they're doing outside of Legends Event Center too. But we're a 122,000 square foot facility. We've got the standard 8 basketball courts, 16 volleyball courts. But really what sets us aside from some of those recreational or tourism facilities that are 8, 10, 12 courts is we have incredible, just state-of-the-art meeting space. We have a family entertainment center that includes a state-of-the-art arcade, and dedicated esports lounge. We have a turf area that we can do some sport performance training, host birthday parties, so you can check off some of those community aspects. But really the banquet space is something that enhances the experience for a lot of our tournaments that come in, whether it's through a hospitality or offering more space just for teams to spread out and not congest the areas. And then just the non-sporting business, why it's called Legends Event Center, not Legends Sports Center. Probably about 40% of our business is non-sporting, whether it's a large trade show. Texas A&M provides a ton of opportunities for us. We host 4 student or career fairs throughout the year. One is the Student Engineering Council career fair. That's the largest student-led career fair, at least A&M claims it, JD. It's the largest student-led career fair in the country, with about 15,000 students that come through Legends over 2 days and over 400 recruiters. So we're happy that Legends has had an early success, but we wouldn't have the success that we've had without the partnership with Destination Bryan and the commitment to continuing to support the facility by the city of Bryan. What I've seen, guys, a lot of times is whether it's a municipality or a private entity, they want to invest the dollars to build a facility. And then the second we open doors, we can't spend another dime. We got to make everything. And that's just not how it works. You need a few years to build up. You need to understand that it still cost a lot of money to operate these incredible facilities that we have the opportunity to manage. And Destination Bryan has helped support that, whether it's through grant funding or in just sponsoring some different groups that come in. We've had the opportunity to kind of grow together in these last 2.5 years. And John Friebel and I have worked with some large events. I won't brag on all of them, but we've had one in particular with the Adidas basketball group that's come in and helped the A&Ms and Adidas school, obviously to help recruit. But here we are in Bryan, College Station, and twice a year we get the top female and male high school basketball players, and all the top D1 coaches coming to recruit them. And it's because of Legends Event Center and the relationship that Destination Bryan and the city have put together to recruit those type of events and roll out the red carpet and get them coming back.
Is that the model that is around the 66 venues that you have similar?
I would say it's similar in a lot of those, probably the ones that are most successful. To me, we cannot be successful as operators standing alone without the partnership of our DMO or a city. We do have a few new facilities that don't have a dedicated DMO. And so we're working through how best to partner there because as we all know, coming out of the pandemic, it's almost like these event operators didn't know that there was grant funding out there, but coming out of the pandemic, they needed assistance to get their tournaments back up and running. And now everybody is looking for assistance, and that's fine. That's where our kind of landscape is moved towards. But if we don't have that local support or even statewide support that JD has actually helped a lot of our facilities here in Texas with, we can't be successful. We can't sustain. We may get an event for once or twice, but be able to continue to host them and bring them in, we got to have that partnership with the DMO and work through the grant funding process.
Well, I told John I'd brag on him a little bit when I had you guys on the show here in a couple of weeks, and that time has come. So now you need to tell John how much fun you had on the reckoning with me and Don.
We talked about it earlier. I didn't name specifics, but you've got a brand new one that came on, last year up in Virginia Beach, JD? How's that going?
Yeah, yes, sir. So personally, Danny, Nancy, and Brooks have been close friends for a long time, right? So whenever I am hitting the pavement to try to see what other opportunities are going on, what agreements are coming up under consideration, all those kind of things. When it has a connection to someone that you are very fond of in the industry, it's always even better opportunity. So yeah, so there was some news out that the former operator was not necessarily matching the desired goals and understandings with the city. Basically, when the RFP process came out, we went hard after it. I would argue that we came in second, unfortunately, the first time around, and I felt like we created a raving fan, not only from a destination perspective, but a little bit of my relationship with them definitely didn't hurt things, right, in the conversations, right, because there's a little more comfortability once we started doing the interview processes and knowing each other. But I will say Ryan Ladd and Wes Hall and the team on the ground in Virginia Beach, excuse me, has been like, that's the differentiator. Again, I can't say enough about our GMs, because that's at the end of the day what is that kind of thing. You get the right individual leading that team, and it makes everyone's life a whole lot easier. So I don't know the specifics financials off the top of my head, but I will tell you in the news it was a very large loss leader, and I will tell you it is no longer a loss leader within the first year of our operations. So I continue to be very proud of the team there, because at the end of the day, yes, I am business development, strategic development, but I go out and I vouch for our team because I believe in what we can do. And Ryan has proved me right, and his team has proved me right. So I definitely appreciate them continuing to do that hard work.
I've always been big believers in you and Jamie, and of course the company itself, and seen the work that you've done firsthand. So I can vouch for that as well. Couple quick ones. I remember our time down there with our good friend Chris O'Brien. I was putting on a music festival up here in 19, and you guys were kind enough to let me shadow you for the, Gulf Coast Jam. I know that is a big event for them yearly. Are they doing 2 now a year?
So it's not 2 Gulf Coast Jam. They used to do, was it Sand Jam, Jamie? Was that the other one? Yeah, and so I go back to the Gulf Coast every year and go see Chris and Patrick and the whole team down there. Larry Thompson with Grand Slam. Make sure I see him while I'm there, and then Rick Horton, team like that over there. And as you know, I mean, Don, I moved there 6 weeks before Hurricane Michael destroyed everything. And so I had a full indoctrination of a community that I still feel very fond of, and speak to at least someone from PCB on a weekly basis, just because when you're everything you have is pretty much destroyed and your family now is back in Texas and you're there helping rebuild, you create a connective tissue with some amazing individuals that you consider, family now. So, yeah, sorry, I went on a tangent a little bit, but yeah, no, it was a love seeing you guys there, and that event is special. Morgan Wallen last year was a lot of fun. So,
Well, and the reason I brought that up first, I know that we're already up on time.
Already.
You gotta be kidding me.
Up close to it.
Oh man. Real quick, the time I spent down there, I could feel knowing the two of you, everywhere you go, you guys have been successful, and you establish roots with those communities that you've both been in. And then seeing you work in the floor at the convention and the after hours and all that, you're very, very well respected. So, and I appreciate your friendship. I'm glad that you're here giving us a tutorial, if you will. But take it a step further. Working relationships to buy the business. How does that work? I know that Jamie's talked a little bit about down there in Texas, but is it 50% of the DMO that goes and gets and buys the business, if you will? Do you work collaboratively? Are you sharing leads? Is it, a lot of work comes out of the company headquarters? What was the term that Jamie used?
The support
what was
center.
the term?
Support center.
Yes. How does that part of the business work? And then do me a favor, throw one more thing in. I remember when I was sitting in the CEO seat here in Tuscaloosa, it was strictly heads in the beds. And we didn't really work on quality of life events. So I know I've thrown a whole bunch at you, but tell me a little bit about how that all works. First on buying the business. Where does the money come from? Is that all DMO money? At the trade shows, you guys are getting leads, I would imagine, and passing it. Take us through that.
Yeah, I think it depends on as I said earlier, the relationship that the venue team has with the DMO, or if they even have a DMO. We have a lot of facilities within states that have strong state. I guess JD helped me with how the collectives, whether it's they're partnering in the NIL world now, using that term collective, how they partner. But it really depends on the individual venue and the team that's leading there. A lot of us do about 90% of the recruitment of those events. And then as we develop, the event organizers and operators really appreciate the ability for us to sit in front of them with the calendar and the ability to contract, and we're the ones running the facility. So it's not a situation where someone's selling or recruiting them and then have to hand them off to another park, another team member. So I think there's an appreciation factor there from the biz dev side. But as I said earlier, we can't be successful with a lot of these events without the partnership with the DMO. So there's definitely times it may be 50-50, or a DMO may bring an event to us and say, can this work within your calendar? So you got to kind of hit it from all angles. But we have a lot of management teams that they go in strong to these conferences. They utilize support systems like Play Easy to look for holes in the calendar to fill. So it's kind of across the board there, Don.
Okay.
Yeah, and Don, to add to that, so I mean, I firmly believe, one community, one team, right? So it's the same approach that we had with Parks and Recreation and College Station is what we do as individual venues, right? So when we're going through, when we're at those conferences, Sports ETA teams, Connect, Sports Relationship, any of those, right? The power of having your venue and your CVB Sports Commission together is a differentiating factor still to this day. We continue to try to improve that. Been working a lot with Sports ETA, as a former board member, but then also from the community perspective of Parks and Recreation to kind of keep pushing that forward. Of if we come together and showcase that makes everyone's life easier. So having that ability and working through, to me, is huge, and it's a continued step that the industry is going. Whether it is us, as the venue operator in the destination, or a destination they're Parks and Rec, our Destination Parks and Rec, and venue operator. So we're able to all cohesively support each other because at the end of the day, where Jamie he is with Legends, but there's other Parks and Rec assets in Bryan. So so when he's got a huge event with Adidas, there's not enough hotel rooms to do a huge softball at BRAC in Bryan, right? So he has to have that relationship with Parks and Recreation and working through that. And even though it's a different destination, College Station, there has to be a communication from that perspective at the same time. So I think it's being that cohesive team, one community, one voice, like that's important.
Well, I know that we're getting ready to head to Tulsa. And Jamie, I don't know if you've already checked out the golf courses yet, but we've had a couple good rounds of golf, haven't we?
Yes, I would say our relationship went from kind of just, hey, mutual, somewhat friends of we share, especially between Stan and Anthony and the Alabama team, and obviously your experience through Hoover. I really feel that our friendship took off on that golf course down in Savannah, at Sports Relationship. Don had to carry us, JD. He was throwing darts from about 150 out, but
doesn't surprise me.
Well, I had Jamie, the closer, with me, so we got to work this out. I know you guys have to divide and conquer. You can't be on the same, but one of these days we got to get JD out there with us as well.
Oh, well, that I'm great at driving a golf cart and partaking in beverages. That's what
That's all I'm good for.
So is Don and Jamie, so don't worry about that.
But I will say my favorite thing about Don is I remember the first time I met Don when he was in Foley pulling that trailer and truck all over the country at different conferences. Like, who is this guy? Like he is everywhere. He drove from Foley, Alabama.
You're my boy, Blue!
The real quick story behind that is I would get there a day early, and I would tip the bellman at whatever property we were at. So I could actually have the truck and trailer staged where when the buses started rolling in, they would see us. That was some of my 101 marketing, which I don't know if I did well or not, but I'll tell you this, as I got older, less and less driving.
The consummate salesman, man, always pitching your product at the very front of the building.
That trip from Foley to, I think there was one in Hartford and then there was one in Milwaukee. That was a long trip with a truck and trailer.
Yeah, Milwaukee's the one I remember because I was like, what?
Carey and John earlier today, they both mentioned Don's truck and trailer as well. So the traveling salesman, literally.
Guys, I can't thank you enough for being on this show today. You, between the other four guests earlier and yourselves, you have educated the masses who will watch this show. And I'm going to tell you what, please, if you are thinking, politician out there, communities out there, if you're thinking about building, these are the guys to go to. You can't lose with SFC. And they didn't pay me to say that. I'm saying that from experience, and because I've been watching them for a long time, you can't lose going with these guys.
JD, I was going to say hired, right?
Yeah, exactly. That's what I was thinking. I mean, I appreciate that very much.
Yes, thank you.
Well,
they can pay us if they want to. Let's before we get off the phone here with them. I mean, real quick, we can send them an invoice.
Can't wait to see you guys in Tulsa. We'll have a blast and we'll do good work as always.
Yes, thank you guys for having us.
Appreciate your time, guys.
Appreciate it.
It's time to get noticed with Southmark Design. Southmark Design is a locally owned advertising specialties company right here in Tuscaloosa, specializing in in-house graphic design, commercial printing, and a number of promotional items. We're proud to rep Southmark Design products right here on The Reckoning. These great polos, these great hats. They look great, they feel great, and most importantly, they get us noticed. So give Scott and Scott a call. They are, again, locally owned. They put the customer above all else. Give them a call at the number on the screen or visit their website, southmarkdesign.com. Well, Don, we called this a mega show at the very, very beginning, and I think it was just that. Very similar to when we were down in Punta Gorda at the Sports Congress, just bringing on a real crop, a batch of some real sports tourism heavy hitters, and certainly a bunch of people that anybody listening to the show in the DMO industry can learn a lot from.
I agree. I think that you come away smarter for listening to these guys.
Which is our goal, by the way.
It is. I mean, we're educating folks on, like for the DMO side, we're educating them on what this city has to offer.
Right.
And we've done that with several of them. But we also are bringing in guests that are in the industry, maybe not a DMO, but I mean, think about it. Sports, tourism, and parks and recreation. We talk about it at all of our conferences and how it's not done properly in a lot of places. Those guys did it.
Absolutely.
I mean, Huddle Up Group, I mean, they don't come much finer than Schmieder, and of course we had Cole and his group, but Alan brings something different to the table as well for cities. And then, of course, the 500-pound gorilla. I mean, now they don't get any bigger than sports facility companies. So I hope that folks have enjoyed as much as we did.
Absolutely. And I mean, we talk about boosting our own street cred. I mean, SFC, Huddle Up Group, Carey and John. I mean, if we didn't have credibility before, we definitely, added some credibility to our name here on The Reckoning by bringing in those guys. But, I always, maybe it's redundant at this point. Maybe people watching are like, Zach needs to shut up. He does this too much. But I always kind of identify main themes of every episode we do. When we were in Montgomery, it was purposeful tourism. That was kind of the theme that kept popping up throughout all of our interviews and our entire session down there. Some of the big themes today, relationships, parks and rec, symbiotic relationships, data, always, right? And that's always a big one. And, it's great to hear from these folks in the industry continue to talk about these things that we have continued to have conversations with at other DMOs, or Punta Gorda, with other people representing their DMOs. So, very, very insightful. Somebody who spent just a few years in the DMO industry, it's great to hear these trends and kind of keep current with things that are going on and walk away with a better understanding of what sports tourism is all about and what goes into it.
Totally agree. This was fun.
Absolutely.
I mean, it really was. And, what would really be fun for me, though, would be the next day after the Super Bowl, I could say that my Steelers won. But since they didn't, I'll just go ahead and say, hey, congrats, Jalen Hurt. One of our guys.
Landon Dickerson, an Alabama guy. Eli Ricks is on the team. Byron Young. A number of Alabama guys winning their Super Bowl ring. Of course, we're filming this the day after the Super Bowl. So, it was a great episode. Want to give a huge shout out to our sponsors, Buffalo Rock, River Run Park, of course, our title sponsor, Giovanni over at Jalapenos and Jalapenos Downtown. You guys help us keep the stories coming and the show going. And what would be really fun for me is if we could add a few more DMOs to our belt. So if any execs out there watching, hey, let us come to your town, man. Show us around a little bit.
We would love that. We'll take a show on the road again.
We'll take a show on the road. Jacob will shoot some great video, and he'll let you have all the raw footage. So
I'm glad you brought that up because we've got two more on the docket coming. We've got Dr. Kiki Baker-Barnes from the HBCU Athletic Conference who'll be up next. She'll be here at Stillman College with her team for the basketball championships. Supported by Visit Tuscaloosa and Stillman. And then next month, we've got Foley. Yeah.
You know a thing or two about Foley.
I think I do.
So we're looking forward to getting on the road. But again, we want to get on the road as much as we can. So feel free to reach out to us at any point in time if you are interested in bringing the Reckoning to your town. But that's going to do it for this episode. We thank you guys for watching. And again, thanks to our sponsors for helping keep this thing rolling.
Awesome. Thanks, guys.
Perfect.